before it is 8 o'clock. It is the 27th day of September 2023. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. It is time for Freshly Pressed, and I've been joined this morning for a look at the newspapers this morning by Lakunle Yusuf. Good morning, Lakunle.
Good morning, Omas. Good morning, Devoe. Good morning to all our listeners, and happy holidays to everyone celebrating the Eid Maulud today.
And good morning, Devoe Okorie.
Good morning, Lagos. Morning, world. Morning, team. Eku. Indefinite strike or total strike?
That said, let's get the listener to be part of the conversation as we progress on the show this morning. To feel free to send messages to the phone line 0809-444-0981. Once again, 0809-444-0981. That will be in response to any of the headlines the analysts will be dissecting this morning. With that said, let's dive into it, gentlemen. I've got this one coming in this morning from the Vanguard newspaper, and taking the cue of the rhetorical greetings sent out this morning by Devoe Okorie, and the Vanguard makes it very lucid here, screaming from the rooftop. NLC, that's the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, and the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, start nationwide indefinite strike on October the 3rd. So, as we speak, two unions, one went on a warning strike not too long ago, and the other was distanced from it, said it was, at the table discussing with the government. But on this day when the announcement was made, it was a joint, communique that was issued at that conference. So, Devoe, I'd like you to walk us through this. Are we likely to see them reading from the same hymn book once again?
Well, apparently so, because yesterday's position was, as you said, joint. It was collaborative. As they say, united we what? Stand. Divided we get nowhere. And the two biggest labor unions, the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress, did meet yesterday to position themselves as to the outcome of the deadlock in the negotiations with the federal government regarding the post-subsidy removal cushioning framework, and aka otherwise known as palliatives. Literally, with the hardships that Nigerians have been experiencing, especially workers in the formal sector, from some of these policy reforms, they've been looking at how to mitigate this or to ensure that people survive. But this is literally 4 months after OT law on May 29th, and we're yet to see any effective move by government, which also means on the flip side, that Nigerians have had to bear the full brunt. And we're not talking about 2 or 3 people, we're talking about 200 million of us. It's obvious that not just the poverty levels have gone up, suffering in general has increased by several notches up. Like I always say in summary, those who had before have less, that's you and I, and then those who had less before have completely nothing, and they are in majority. Now, under a democracy, you have the total right to agitate or to make your positions known to government in whichever way you believe is possible. So these unions coming together, and I'm saying this because people need to understand how it works, that they are a strong force. They represent over 49 different sectoral affiliates nationwide within the country. And they've said, even though the TUC didn't join, because they felt that, okay, they have a different method in trying to achieve this outcome, but they believe that their objective alongside with the NLC is same. So there's no surprise that they have joined. And now that the negotiation has broken down, what they're saying is that they're going to have a total shutdown, which is supposed to be, like we used to hear in those days, the mother of all strikes. What does that mean? It just, apart from the offices that the NLC and TUC members come from shutting down, you will not see your staff that day. They intend to picket every public institution not to work, especially the Electricity Gas Workers Association, which Joe Ajero used to be the president. Also, banks, they're saying banks will have to shut down. They're saying ports will have to shut down, both airports and seaports will have to shut down. And the one that usually is the clincher, the one that hooks government. Remember, Pengasin and Mupenga, members of TUC, those are the people who operate our oil wells, our flow stations. And in times past, it's really government began to, you've never seen government sweat. But when they tell you they're shutting the flow stations down, where we make our daily crude production, it usually shifts the hand of government. But the truth is, these are the intentions. Now, does the NLC or the TUC have the clout or the popularity or the influence to be able to get Nigerian workers to actually support them to make this happen? That's on one side. Right. The flip side is why is the federal government allowing this to happen? And I'm saying this because they're just representing the voice of the people. Why is the federal government, having gotten the increase in revenue, at least from the removal of subsidy up to this time, having not spent the subsidy they used to do for FX, not taking the measures step by step? Nobody's saying you have to have all the answers, but at least let's have a roadmap. If you don't even have a roadmap, take 2 steps forward so that we know that there's hope for the many hungry masses that are.
All right, I'll go over to Lakunle. Lakunle, you have to make this snappy because you've got a paper waiting for you, the Punch newspaper in Lagos. So let's get this over with.
Okay, so very quickly, one, I don't believe, like I've always said, I don't believe strike solves any problem. Just as the things that Devoe have mentioned now, we say, well, I want to make money to pay these things. We are going to shut down the places where we are going to make the money. So how will they make the money to pay you in the first instance? Strikes hurt things. People are tired of strikes in itself. You can look at the one they did the last time. What was the level of compliance? Again, the NLC needs to stop being a reactive organization and TUC. They need to form bodies within them. Where is their lobby group in the State House of Assembly? Where is their lobby body in the National Assembly? Where is their strategic committee in formulating policies with government and making sure that members are part of committees being nominated for ministerial positions and stuff like that? Where are those things? Why do they wait until government does something, then they say we don't agree, then we are going to go on strike? That is where the Labour Congress should be. I want to assume that that, for example, electricity that Joe Ajaero is president is a private concern now. It is not government. So everybody, they should also not forget that while they have a right to strike, other people have a right not to join the strike. So they can't force people to do what they don't want to do, really. And so those are the kind of things that we should be focusing on now. Yes, and as a matter of fact, government has told us in not so clear terms, there's no money right now to pay anything that they're asking for. So going on strike doesn't solve the problem. Going on strike will not bring the money. The only thing we can do is work out how we can get the money so that government can pay you.
All right, so let's get into the next paper. That point made already. So to be or not to be, we've got 2 sides here. Devoe, Okorie, and Yusuf, seeing it from different prism, but heading towards the same direction. The Punch newspaper looks at you this morning, Yusuf, and it says, Lagos deploys technology to promote safety in schools. That's what we've got here, especially when we match that with what is happening across the country. Nasarawa State Poly, we had the shootings went on there, and then some persons have been shot dead, and then a student was taken hostage. So speak to me about this, if this is a proactive measure.
Well, looking at the story, it's not so clear exactly which aspect of safety that this project is concerned about. I see here that Dr. Isuro showed the lead resource for the Safe School Lagos initiative, was speaking at an award conference and says that they are forming an alliance with police and Federal Road Safety Corps, which suggests the kind of safety that you just mentioned. Then down the line in the story, they started talking about cybersecurity. So if it is the first line of security about the physical one, safety of children in school, safety of the environment where they're in school, we've had instances of hit and run drivers around school areas and all that. It's beautiful. So it then means that one of the first things they're going to do in deploying technology, there's going to be CCTV installed in all public schools in the states. They will have a command center where all these things will be monitored. Now, here goes the big one. What is going to be the response to emergency calls? This report does not say that. However, it is a good start that we start thinking about things like this, that we should consider that those are the kind of places where safety of our children particularly should be guaranteed. And I also see from the report that they are also involving personnel from the entertainment industry. These are people that our children are easily influenced by their lifestyle, whether for good or for bad. Hopefully, this time this is for good. And when you involve this kind of people, our children are most likely to listen to what they are saying. That's a good move. And like I said, it is the start. Let us see where it will head. Let us see that it will be money well spent, that our children will be safe in the schools. At least while they're in school, all parents will be comfortable that, okay, I know where my child is. I know that if this happens, I will get this information within a few minutes. And I know that the police and the road safety and any other emergency response squad as constituted in the state can respond in good time to keep them safer from any whatever that might happen.
Thank you very much, Lakunle Yusuf, this morning for that expansive look at the story there. But let's get into the Nation newspaper, where we find the next story coming from. It says, federal government needs 217 billion naira to complete 269 roads. That's according to the Minister of Works, Devoe, speaking to those who would, give the nod for the money to be spent when it's available to get this done in terms of infrastructure. Speak to us about this project, because he mentioned a particular axis of the state of the country, the Benin, around that Delta axis, where it says people, lines of trailers, parking, people being kidnapped, and it's time for the party in government now to live up to its renewed hope mandate. Speak to us about it in about 2 minutes.
Well, unfortunately, in this situation, this roads issue, we have a Minister of Works who is actually a square peg in a square hole. This is a rare occurrence in this country, and you can tell by his communication, his engagement, that he's not just learning on the job or being advised. He literally knows what to do, okay? And this is almost a stirring example for what it should be like actually in every ministry, because you have lots of parastatal and ministry and agency staff who are experienced in some of these sectors who actually should be in leadership positions. Well, Dave Umahi, that's his name, the Minister of Works. He's literally been doing a national tour, seeing the states, of affairs of especially the road network. Remember, Works covers not just roads, but a lot of civic infrastructure for the federal government. Now, it's important, especially regarding roads, because roads is where you have access for the nation to work, for trade and commerce to happen effectively. One of the first things the colonial masters did was roads, okay? Now, he's saying that the federal government would need about 217 billion to complete about 269 roads across the country, okay? Because as you know, I mean, it's not far from here, Lagos Ibadan. For the past 30 years, we're still building. And so many other arteries connecting different regional sides of this country together are incomplete, inadequate, or haven't even been done well. And his assessment hasn't been small measured. I mean, he's been given it openly so that many will hear. He's saying that during the Buhari administration, about 530 billion was environment. It was wired towards subsidy payments back then, okay, for palliatives, etc., to vulnerable Nigerians. Obviously, that was in this administration. So what that did was a lot of the infrastructural projects were left incomplete. Now he's saying that if the National Assembly can reallocate this back, they can begin to complete many of them. He's also warning and hacking on the poor supervision by the Ministry of Works, especially in the various regions. He spoke about in Benin, where you could see from
just
miles away.
Hold the Benin thought. We'll just quickly go on. There's some red traffic stop, and then when we come back, you close up on that thought, and then we get into some more papers. But get your thoughts coming on to 0809-444-0981. We're smooth 98.1, and it's freshly pressed. Go back. The smooth 98.1 FM is still freshly pressed. And before we went on that break, Devoe, you were going to conclude your thoughts on this infrastructural deficit and what it requires. You're speaking on Benin.
Benin, that's the Federal Minister of Works. He was speaking on the Benin road network, where he was saying trailers were falling off visibly. That we know, and it's good to hear a minister speak in this manner. It's not always Nigerians groaning in pain. He was saying that what I saw on the Benin Warri Road were no longer potholes, but boreholes. I mean, it's good to have federal government attestation of the sufferings of Nigerians, because sometimes when all these things are said, videos and pictures, it seems as if no attention is given. So I'm glad he's realizing that we have borehole crater-like holes in the major expresses and pipelines in the. He even spoke about the Kaduna, Abuja, Zaria, Kano link road, saying that he disagreed with the quality of work. Also, he was telling the contractors that if you like, you don't think you can frighten me with the calculations that in terms of the big bills. He's done his own calculations. He has an idea of the BOQ, as they call it, the bill of quantities. For those in construction, you will know where the corruption takes place. It's in the bill of quantities. Oh. Now you have a minister who understands the nitty-gritty and is saying that, look, we may even have to shift this from the asphalt to the concrete, which is cheaper and has a longer lasting outcome for the people. Like I said, this is exemplary. We want every minister, even if a minister is not schooled in the sector that he was allocated, you have schooled, experienced, seasoned professionals to be able to deliver governance. This is the value. And what his point here is that
we have to move on now.
If we continue like this, the renewed hope that the president had promised may not come to pass. Go on, Minister. Let's see you deliver.
Let's move on now to Lakunle Yusuf with this next story from the Daily Trust newspaper. And it screams here, Senate confirms Cardoso as CBN governor along with 4 others. And from what we see, is this looking like a fine time to be the CBN governor? And added to it, a banker has just gone. A banker, in comes one. Do you see him being able to tackle the challenges ahead?
First, let me say congratulations to Mr. Michael Olayemi Kadu. Yes, and I say that measuredly. Why? Like I've always maintained, even before the advent of this government that I pity those who will succeed the government that just left, because the things that they have to deal with in good faith or in whatever faith that we may want to look at it are not small. They are not things that you can wave off with your hands. Look at the myriad of problems that this gentleman is assuming office, is getting into office to face. Just recently, we just talked about the failure to meet up with their futures trading of the dollars. I think was it last week, Thursday or Wednesday, that news broke. We have the issue of the multiple face type of currency we are spending in Nigeria today. We don't know whether we are still finishing up with that or we're reverting to the old one, or we keep spending the two together. The monetary policy, where is Nigeria heading? Inflation rates, the exchange rate of the Naira vis-a-vis the international currencies of the world. Just a few days ago, I was looking at a 1983 newspaper, and I was looking at the exchange rates corner where it had dollar was 1 Naira was $1.40, and pound was 1 to 1, and this was in 1983. And where we are 40 years after, $1 is approaching 1,000 Naira. Okay, so those are the basic things that the man must do. He must first assert his independence, as the CBN should be, and face the monetary policy, and leave all the other things that, although yes, at the time that they were done, they looked good. All this, our anchor borrowers program, all this and that. Yes, the CBN can provide the infrastructure or the means for it to happen. Leave that to the commercial banks to handle. It shouldn't be the job of the CBN to be focusing on things like that, right? It should focus on our monetary policy. What we have to do, it would have to work with the Federal Ministry of Finance in where they formulate the policies, the fiscal policies that will work. Because it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to need the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy. It's going to need the Minister of Agriculture to advise on how we can make dollars from agriculture and so on and so forth. So uneasy lies the head that wears the crown. What I would say for him right now. I wish him all the best, because if he does well, Nigeria will benefit and all of us will benefit.
All right. Thank you very much for that submission. Devoe, you'd have to do this for us because we need to pick up pace. We've got messages to Russia and probably get across also this morning. Get them coming on to 0809-444-0981. Speak to us about this, the headline from the Guardian newspaper. The Nigerian Bar Association calls for appointment of more Supreme Court judges. This comes to mind. Are the current judges being overworked? Speak to us, Devoe.
Well, basically, it's an old call on the reforms of the judicial system. And here they're referring to the highest apex court, the Supreme Court, as they were going through the valedictory service for Justice Amina Alji, who was bowing out after a compulsory and mandatory 70 years attainment Congress to her. However, I think there were about 10. Many have resigned recently, about 2 or 3 of them. So the numbers have come down. Now, beyond increasing the number of Supreme Court justices, the NBA was pushing for this move by the National Assembly. They've also said that they might need to reform the Supreme Court's jurisdiction in terms of its limitation, the kind of cases that they're saying Supreme Court literally, because of the few numbers, should only deal with constitutional matters. Because right now what you see is literally every case, criminal or civil, if you have enough money, you push it from the magistrate to the what do you call it, the high courts, and then moves to the appeal court. It always ends up at my land, my issue always ends up at the Supreme Court. So what normally happens, it's almost as if jurisdiction or justice is not granted. It negates the process. It negates the efficacy. And what that means is that when every Tom, Dick, and Harry can end up at the Supreme Court, which, if you check the pyramid, they're the fewest. All the cases that should have been resolved somewhere down the line all mount up ending up at the Supreme Court level. And those justices who don't even look at evidence now have to start going through everything again. And we already know the judicial process is a bit manual. Now, take a look at the election tribunals. There are about 419 cases pending. That's just election tribunal. Talk less of all the other cases that were pending before then. So not only will they need to increase the number of Supreme Court justices, they really need to make a move on this.
Can I quickly make a
jurisprudence
comment
and its limitation?
You may just all right, quickly.
30 seconds. So the Constitution says that there cannot be more than 21 judges in the Supreme Court. Today, how many do we have? Normally, we should not. If we're going to have to say that we want to have more than 21, so it's a constitutional matter. The National Assembly must make that happen, right? So that's where the NBA should focus.
They were asking for the appointments because they're just roughly below 10.
So they will have to go back to the National Assembly.
Make up that 21. Yes, they need them to make up that 21 first. Then if we need more, they'll go to the National Assembly. So it's a right call to fill up that 21 spaces.
Looks like a fine place to get into the messages this morning. And I've got Ajayi Olonilua sending this one in, says it's inevitable that labor will eventually go on strike, given the rather sloppy approach of government to the self-inflicted wounds of subsidy removal on both fuel and foreign exchange. God help us, Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo, GRA Sherry. I've got Abbas Oladepo saying, beautiful submission devoid of emotion by Lakunle. Labor union will shut down the livelihood of same people they claim to be fighting for with the strike. If you turn off power, people will be forced to go buy fuel for their generators. When markets are locked, how do they get food to buy? Labor should be more proactive and not reactive. As for Devoe and the money needed for the construction and the completion of those roads, he talked about 217. It says Devoe is doing what the outgone Fashola has done before, is just continuing with the beautiful work of the past Minister of Works. Now, Chidi comes up and it's for you, Devoe. You mentioned BQ. That's a bill of what he would like to hear because Chidi is listening.
Bill of quantity.
No, he needs to hear that.
Bill of quantity.
Okay, that's what
MOQ.
Okay. So that's what BQ.
BOQ. It's a list of all the items you need to deliver a project.
Okay, so
and at that point, you now cost it.
So he sent in to quickly get that one in from you. So next comes this one. Osage from Ojodu says, the same TUC president that refused to join the warning strike was the same that announced the indefinite strike. Only tell us one thing, government is very unserious. That's Osage from Ojodu. And then a final message this morning, if no one is doing that last minute typing to throw into the works, Dakbo from Williams Avenue says, this Dr. Yemi Cardoso fellow seems to be an intelligent and versatile individual who is, with mutual and collective assistance, should be able to bring the Nigerian economy out of the doldrums. The idea of romancing with the global free market initiative is colossal, and his idea of closing the borders and advancing industrially is wise. And with the power sector being stable, manufacturing availability will come into manifestation. Long way for us to go, but this is a starting point. That's seeming to take off from what you mentioned, Lakunle, where you said it must be all hands on deck, work with the Minister of Digital Economy, everybody, finance minister, so that they can be on the same page, not one talking this way, the other one saying, I'm not aware. Remember the outgone finance minister when the monetary issues came up with the former CBN governor, and he said, I'm not aware. I saw it on the pages of the newspaper. But
absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It's a fine place for us to say it's a smooth morning so far. I want to say thank you to Lakunle Yusuf this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Happy holidays once again. And let's look forward to a wonderful October 1st celebration in a few days.
And to Devoe Okorie, it's also saying thank you to you.
Right.
Cool. Here we go. Well, it's a wrap. It's been Smooth 98.1 FM. It's still going to be, I've got sports coming up after this time out at 8:15 a.m. with Chega Onojaife. And that's a wrap on Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. Good morning.
Morning.